It started with 10 inches of kitchen counter. 10 inches that one of my roommates decided she owned. And when we accidentally left a toasty maker there for an hour, she lost her mind. So we did the only reasonable thing left. We removed everything she depended on and built our own private kitchen. Right inside our bedroom. If you've ever lived with a nightmare roommate, you already know how small things turn into full-blown wars. So before we get into this petty masterpiece, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me the worst roommate you've ever had. Because trust me, by the end of this story, you're going to feel very satisfied. Living with roommates is always a gamble. Sometimes you get lucky people who mind their business, clean up after themselves, maybe even become friends. And then sometimes you get her. We had been living together for a while, 4 of us total. Me, my close friend, let's call her Jess, and the 2 others. At first, everything was manageable. Not perfect, but manageable. You know that quiet tension, the kind that sits in the air but doesn't explode yet? Yeah, that was us. One of the girls, let's call her Clara, had this strange relationship with shared space. And I don't mean likes things tidy. I mean territorial, obsessive. Like every inch of the kitchen came with invisible borders only she could see. At first, it was small things. Can you not leave your mug there? That sponge isn't supposed to go on that side. Who moved my salt? Little comments. The kind you brush off. The kind you try to brush off. Because you don't want to be that person who turns everything into drama. But over time, those little comments started stacking. Like pressure in a sealed jar. You ever walk into a room and immediately feel like you've done something wrong even when you haven't? That was the kitchen. Every time I stepped in, I felt it. Like I needed permission to exist there. Like I had to calculate every movement. Where I put the spoon, how long something stayed on the counter. Even the sound of setting something down felt too loud. Jess noticed it too. We'd exchange looks. Those silent, is it just me or kind of looks. And it wasn't just us, the other roommate. Mostly kept quiet, the classic, avoid conflict at all costs type, which meant Clara's behavior went unchecked. Then one day, she made it official. I remember it so clearly because it was just so absurd. She pointed to this tiny section of the kitchen worktop. I'm talking maybe 10 inches, right next to where we kept most of our utensils. And she said, very calmly, "Can you guys not put anything here? This is my space." Her space. In a shared kitchen. Jess blinked. I actually thought she was joking. I even let out this small laugh, you know, the kind you do when something is so ridiculous your brain hasn't caught up yet. But she didn't laugh. She just stared, dead serious. And that's when it hit me. She meant it. And in that moment, I had 2 options. Push back or let it go. And if you've ever lived in a shared space, you know the calculation. Is this worth the argument? Is this worth the tension? Is this worth turning the house into a battlefield? So we did what most people do. We let it go. But what Clara didn't realize was that every time we let something go, we were keeping score. Fast forward a few days. Normal evening. Jess had made toasties, nothing fancy, just something quick. After using the toasty maker, she left it on the counter to cool. Not overnight, not all day, for an hour, that's it. We didn't even think about it, because you know that's what people do. I was in my room when I heard it. That sharp, irritated voice cutting through the flat. Whose is this? You know that tone? The one that immediately puts you on edge. Jess looked at me. I looked at her. And without saying anything, we both knew. Clara. We walked into the kitchen, and there she was, standing over the toasty maker like it had personally offended her, her arms crossed, her expression tight, eyes locked on that tiny section of counter. This was left here, she said, not asked. Stated. Jess tried to keep it calm. Oh yeah, I just left it to cool, but this is my space. There it was again. My space. Like a broken record, Jess blinked. It's just for a bit, you need to respect that. Respect, for 10 inches of countertop. And something inside me just snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. The kind of snap where you suddenly see everything clearly. This wasn't about the toasty maker. This wasn't about space. This was about control. And we had been giving it to her piece by piece. Later that night, Jess and I were in my room, door closed. The kind of conversation you know is about to turn dangerous. Jess sat on the bed, staring at the wall. Then she said, if things on her counter bother her so much, she paused and slowly looked at me. Maybe we should just remove our stuff completely. I tilted my head. What do you mean? And then she smiled. That kind of smile that tells you something petty is about to happen. Not just move it, she said. Remove it. Completely. And let's see how she likes that. And in that moment, the plan was born. There's a very specific kind of silence that happens when two people realize they're about to do something incredibly petty. Not loud, not chaotic, just focused. Jess and I sat there, staring at each other, and without needing to say much more, we both understood. This wasn't about arguing anymore. This wasn't about explaining. This was about demonstrating. Because here's the thing about people like Clara, you can't reason with them. You can't explain fairness to someone who genuinely believes shared space belongs to them. And every time we tried to keep the peace, all we were really doing was teaching her that her behavior worked. So if she wanted control over the kitchen, we were going to give it to her, all of it. Now, if you've ever lived with roommates, you know the kettle isn't just an appliance. It's survival. Tea, coffee, instant noodles, late-night comfort, morning sanity, and most importantly, it was ours. We bought it. We maintained it. And Clara? Oh, she used it constantly. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not because I had to, but because I was excited. That quiet, mischievous energy humming under your skin, the kind that makes even simple actions feel like part of a master plan. I walked into the kitchen. Everything was normal, too normal. The kettle sat there on the counter, innocent, unaware of what was about to happen. I picked it up, paused for a second, and then I smiled. Carrying that kettle back to my room felt weirdly powerful, like I was reclaiming something, not just an object, but control. Jess was already awake when I got back. She looked up, saw the kettle in my hand, and immediately started laughing. "Wait, you actually did it." "Oh, we're doing this properly," I said, and that's when things escalated. Because once you start, why stop halfway? We didn't just take the kettle, we committed, completely. Trip by trip, we transformed our room. The kettle went on the desk. Mugs followed. Sugar disappeared from the kitchen jar and reappeared in ours. Tea bags, gone. Coffee, also gone. And then the final touch. Those little individual milk portions. The kind you see in cheap hotel rooms. Jess had a pack of them. She placed them neatly beside the mugs and stepped back. Our room no longer looked like a bedroom. It looked like a tiny, slightly unhinged cafe or a budget hotel setup. Functional, self-contained, and most importantly, completely independent. Standing there, looking at what we'd created, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Because for the first time, we didn't have to step into that kitchen and feel watched. We didn't have to calculate where things went. We didn't have to exist under her invisible rules. We had removed ourselves from her control entirely. And then came the best part. Waiting. Because we both knew it wouldn't take long. It started subtly. You could always tell when Clara was in the kitchen. The cupboards opened a little sharper, the footsteps just a bit heavier. That morning we heard it. The kettle switch, or rather, the absence of it. Silence, then cupboard, another cupboard. Pause, footsteps, faster this time. From our room we could hear everything. Drawers opening, closing, opening again. That confused frustration building. Like someone trying to solve a puzzle that shouldn't exist. And then the footsteps stopped completely. A long pause, the kind where you know it's hit them. Here's the genius of it. She couldn't say anything, not without exposing herself. Because what was she going to say? "Hey, where's the kettle I use all the time but don't own?" Or, "Can you put it back on the counter I told you not to use?" Every possible complaint made her sound ridiculous. Jess looked at me. I looked at her. And we both just lost it. Silent laughter. The kind where you have to cover your mouth so you don't give yourself away. Because this wasn't loud revenge. This wasn't confrontation. This was elegant, but we didn't stop there. Oh no, we committed, fully. Days went by. And our little hotel setup became our new normal. Morning tea, in the room. Late night coffee, in the room. Snacks, also migrating slowly into our space. And something interesting started happening. The kitchen lost its power over us. It became just a room, not a battleground. Not a place we had to navigate carefully, just irrelevant. Meanwhile, for Clara, it became a problem. She never confronted us directly, but you could see it, feel it, the tension, the irritation, the way she lingered in the kitchen a little longer than usual, like she was waiting, hoping one of us would walk in so she could say something. But we didn't, because now we were the ones setting boundaries. Without saying a word, without making a scene, we had simply opted out. And then one evening she finally tried. Not directly, not boldly, but in that passive, careful way people do when they know they don't have the upper hand anymore. And what happened next was even more satisfying than we expected. By this point, it had been a few days, and something had clearly changed. Not just in the kitchen, but in the energy of the flat. You could feel it in the silence. That heavy, unspoken awareness that something wasn't quite right anymore. Except this time it wasn't us walking on eggshells. It was her. And that was the strangest part. For weeks, maybe longer, we had been the ones adjusting. The ones shrinking ourselves to avoid conflict. The ones overthinking every small action. But now we didn't need the kitchen. We didn't need her approval. We didn't need to play by rules that only existed in her head. And without that control, she didn't quite know what to do. It happened in the evening. Jess and I were in our room, mugs in hand, kettle quietly humming on the desk like it belonged there all along. Then we heard it. A knock, not loud, not confident, just there. Jess raised an eyebrow, I smirked. Here we go. I opened the door, and there she was. Clara, but she didn't look angry. Not exactly. She looked uncomfortable, like someone trying to say something they hadn't fully rehearsed. Her eyes flicked past me and landed on the kettle. Oh, she hesitated. That alone was new. I was just wondering. Another pause. If the kettle is staying in here now, I leaned slightly against the doorframe. Casual, relaxed. Oh yeah, I said. We just didn't want to put anything on your counter. That line hung in the air. Heavy. Perfect. Because it did exactly what it needed to do. It forced her to hear her own logic reflected back at her. Her face shifted, just slightly. That tiny flicker of realization, because she understood. Completely. There was no misunderstanding. No confusion. This wasn't accidental. This was intentional. And she couldn't argue with it. You could almost see the thoughts running through her head. If she complained, she'd be admitting that the rule she enforced didn't make sense. If she demanded the kettle back, she'd be contradicting herself. If she got angry, she'd look unreasonable. So she did the only thing she could do. Oh, right. A small nod, awkward, forced. Well, okay then. And just like that, she turned and walked away. The moment the door closed, Jess dropped her mug onto the desk, carefully but dramatically. Oh my, we didn't even let each other finish sentences. We just burst out laughing. Not loud enough to be obvious, but enough to release days of built-up tension. Because it wasn't just funny, it was satisfying, deeply satisfying. Not because we won something dramatic, but because we took control back. Without yelling, without fighting, without becoming the kind of person we were dealing with. We simply stopped playing her game. After that, things changed, subtly, but permanently. The kitchen became neutral again. She stopped making comments, stopped enforcing invisible boundaries, stopped acting like shared space was hers to control. And we took our time, slowly bringing things back, not all at once, just enough to re-establish balance. And looking back, it wasn't really about the kettle, or the counter, or even Clara. It was about something a lot of people deal with but don't always realize. When you constantly give in to unreasonable behavior, you teach people that it works. But when you quietly remove yourself from it, when you stop feeding into it, that's when the power dynamic shifts. Some revenge is loud, messy, explosive, but the most satisfying kind is the kind where the other person realizes they created the problem themselves. If you've ever dealt with a controlling or difficult roommate, I know you felt this one. So drop a comment, what's the pettiest or most satisfying revenge you've ever seen or done? And if you want more stories like this where karma is quiet but perfectly executed, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Because trust me, this is just the beginning. We had a roommate who claimed part of the kitchen counter as hers, so when she freaked out over something small, we decided to give her exactly what she wanted by removing everything she used. What started as a tiny argument turned into one of the most satisfying petty revenge moments ever. If you love Reddit revenge stories, roommate drama, and perfectly executed karma, this one is for you.
If you like stories where people finally get what they deserve, click the playlist on screen and binge the rest.